So we've got these massive increases in these planning applications, but at the end of the day, are they going to put more resources? I think the biggest complaint everyone's got is that it takes too long to get planning permission. I mean, I think most people would say they'd rather pay an extra few £100 and get permission quicker, surely.
Yeah, but I don't if it's going to happen. I think they've increased the fees, but have you noticed any more planning officers? I still get the same planning officer every time I lodge an application.
But is that got to do with the amount of people that are trained up and qualified to be able to do the role?
So we're saying it's going to take ages. So the fees will increase now, and then maybe in 5 years' time, it might get better.
Well, something needs to improve. I think when it comes to, because there's an impact whether it's a homeowner extension project or whether it is a development, that all gets fed into the construction industry. So if we've got applications that are taking ages and ages, then you're slowing the construction industry.
I mean, that's probably the best one to look at. You focus on the homeowners. It's going up from, it's like 250 odd quid, isn't it?
To 500.
It's doubled in 500, which is that's a real decent increase, isn't it, in fee?
It's double.
But if you break that down, it's not that unreasonable because, well, I suppose for some householder applications, it's potentially different, but you'll have for a lot, you might have a planning officer look at it.
Yeah.
Conservation officer might look at it if it's in a conservation area or near one.
Highways.
You'll have a highways officer look at it if you've got any access changes. You'll have the BNG person look at it. You'll also have environmental health look at it if you've got an air source heat pump or anything like that.
Yeah.
You've got the council are also consulted as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then, so that's, it's a lot of people to look at it. So if you're expecting them, each one of those, a lot of them have to do a visit. So it's not hard to see how it could cost. The reality is it still costs more than that for the council to deal with the application.
I think if we was going to improve it, I think permitted development needs to be clearer. And maybe that needs to change to improve, because at the end of the day, permit development was brought in so that people stopped doing planning applications because the council couldn't keep up. And it was just obviously a pointless exercise on simple stuff. I mean, now if we've got a home extension and you're doing, say, a 3-metre extension, it's a sort of an old-fashioned sort of permit development scheme. So you don't need to do anything, you can just go ahead and build it, but you've got to make sure you've got building regulations approval. But now, if you say doing a 3-metre to 6, or it could be 4 to 8, depending on what the type of house is, you need to put in a prior approval. So even though it's permitted development, you still need to put in an application. So that's still a workload which the council need to deal with.
Yeah, the big problem with the permitted development, I mean, that's a question we get asked all the time, isn't it? Is it permitted development? Which is always a tricky question for us, because the permitted development rules are very long and boring and actually quite complicated. They're not that straight. Some of the points are simple. So your eaves height mustn't be more than this, but particularly when it comes to if your house is in a conservation area, there's certain parts that are a little bit grey.
Yeah.
So it's very risky for us to say to someone, yes, we would consider this permitted development, because in the worst case scenario, a neighbour complains, enforcement officer comes out, if he deems it not to be permitted, you might have to take it down.
The only safety net you've got to have the answer to the question, is it permitted development or not, is to put in a lawful development certificate. That's the only way of knowing. And we've done it before in the past where we submitted a lawful development certificate, and it was a development which was built in the 1970s, I think it was. And the planning officer was the only one that had records to the development and said that no one had permit development rights. And there was no way of knowing that they didn't have them.
Which is common, isn't it?
You have to be careful.
That's an Article 4, isn't it? So there are places that have an Article 4 where your permitted development rights are removed. So don't just assume that you have those permitted development rights. You do need to check. There are checks that need to be done. And the truth is, I think the other thing probably to point out is that there is a lot of stuff that's built that people think is permitted development but isn't. Loads. I could walk down my street and point it out. And the reason for that is, I think, because people think that there's a guy that drives around in a car and is basically looking out for people building stuff that isn't permitted.
What's his name? We look out for him.
Exactly. But the reality is that enforcement, it relies on the general public to make complaints, and that's the only time anything gets flagged. So someone might build an extension or a porch or something that technically needed planning permission.
We talk about planning officers and that sort of thing, but enforcement, they're hot on the case. Like, you know, we say we have to wait ages and ages for something to happen related to getting planning application, but if you do something wrong, don't you worry, planning enforcement team will be on your door pretty quick.
Yeah, they want you to cease, don't they? So you get a ceasing order while they investigate it. But the only way they know is if people report it. If people don't report it, a lot of extensions go unknown, you know, and people think that, oh, no one said anything, so therefore it must be permitted, but that's not the case.
I don't think people should be, through what we're talking about, be scared about doing an extension or worry about putting a planning application. There's, for most people wanting to do a single story extension, a loft, a 2-story, you know, there's usually a solution that can be found, and, you know, rely on your architect or architectural designer to guide you on what is permitted development, what isn't. I think the key thing that I always say is make sure you get the best design.
Yeah.
You know, and not focus too much of trying to design to permit development. I think you should always design to get the best solution and then choose the legislation which will get you where you want to be based on that design.
Yeah, because sometimes plan application might be a little bit more money, but if it gets you what you need, then it's the right decision, isn't it? And the only reason, I suppose, the other thing, going back onto this legislation, that you want to sort of probably have all your ducks in a line is because if you're thinking of selling your house, you know, in the next sort of few years, then there is the potential that things can get flagged up. You know, people have had extensions before when they try and sell their house. If the solicitor picks up that there's no paperwork.
Happened on the one that I bought. So the one I bought had an outbuilding. It conservation area, been there a few years, and the previous owner, he had to get insurance out for it to be able to sell me the property. So they do get, you know, it does get picked up. So any building works, make sure you speak to a professional, make sure you get the correct advice, all the paperwork in place, because, you know, it's not worth it. It's like when people doing works to your house, not getting building regs approval on small works. You know, some works are exempt, some are not, but you need to make sure you check, because when you go to sell your property, it's going to come up in the searches. And if you haven't got your building control certificate, that's when you're going to have problems.
Yeah, and then it becomes really expensive and confusing. You're trying to get people to come out to assess, was this done to building regs, when you can't see the steel or no one knows what's in, or
it's going to affect the price, or people are going to be put off, or you're going to have to force to do it retrospectively, which is to, you know, after the act, to apply for building regs.
Which is doable but painful.
Yeah.
So best avoided.